December 24th, 1944. Somewhere in the snow-covered woods south of St. Vith, the Ardennes is wrapped in a freezing silence, so complete it's almost painful. The kind of silence that only comes after the artillery finally stops. Too sudden, too empty, as if even the trees are afraid to move. American infantryman Private Daniel Cooper crouches behind the scorched trunk of a shattered pine. His gloves are stiff with frozen sweat. His rifle is jammed with mud, and he hasn't seen another friendly face in hours. The German counteroffensive had smashed through his battalion at dawn. What followed was a blur, smoke, shouting, running through the trees with no sense of where the front line was anymore. Now, alone in the woods on Christmas Eve, Cooper listens. There. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Getting closer. He grips his last grenade, pulls the pin with trembling fingers, and waits for the shadow moving through the trees to reveal itself. And then he sees him. A young German lancer, barely 20, uniform dusted with frost, rifle hanging loosely from his hands. He's exhausted. Lost. Just as scared as Cooper. Two enemies. 20 meters apart. One wrong twitch away from killing each other. A gust of wind sweeps through the trees, carrying the faint sound of distant church bells from a ruined village far behind the lines. A reminder of what night it is. Then the German soldier slowly reaches into his coat. Not for a weapon, but for a single, battered cigar. He holds it up, offering it gently, cautiously, and whispers the only English he knows. Peace tonight. This is the story of two soldiers, two enemies, who discovered in the frozen silence of the Ardennes that the war had lied to both of them. By late December, the Battle of the Bulge had become a fight against the elements as much as the enemy. Temperatures dropped below -20°C. Snow fell so thick it erased entire units overnight. Rifles jammed. Boots froze. Men on both sides suffered frostbite worse than bullet wounds. The American 106th Infantry Division, Cooper's division, was one of the newest, least experienced units in Europe. They had barely settled into their positions when the German offensive slammed into them. Within hours, entire regiments were surrounded or scattered. Cooper was one of the stragglers, cut off, disoriented, unsure if he was behind his own lines or the enemy's. But he wasn't the only one caught in the storm. The German soldier Cooper encountered was Gefreiter Jacob Weiss, a baker's son from Hamburg. He had grown up believing every word of German propaganda. Americans were savage, violent, lacking honor. They tortured prisoners. They burned cities. They killed for sport. The same way American films and magazines painted the German soldier as fanatical, merciless, a machine without a soul. Neither side realized how similar their fears were. By Christmas Eve, Weiss had been marching for days with little food, little sleep, and no sense of where his unit had gone. He had been sent into the offensive expecting a quick breakthrough. Instead, he found himself alone in a silent forest that felt more like a graveyard. He carried a rifle he barely trusted, and a single cigar his sister had slipped into his pocket before he left home. When Weiss and Cooper first spotted each other, both froze. Not out of discipline, out of fear. Each had been taught the same lesson. If you hesitate, you die. But cold, exhaustion, and loneliness can make a man do strange things. Cooper loosened his grip on the grenade. Weiss shifted his rifle onto his back. Both raised a hand, not surrendering, just acknowledging something neither could put into words. I don't want to die today. Then Weiss made the strangest choice of his life. He pulled the cigar from his coat, split it unevenly with shaking hands, and offered half to the American soldier who should have been his executioner. Cooper stared at the tobacco in Weiss's frostbitten fingers. A cigar wasn't just a cigar. In that moment, it was warmth, humanity, a refusal to let the war decide everything about them. Cooper took it. Weiss struck a single match, his last. They crouched behind the tree trunk, shielding the tiny flame from the wind. And for the first time in hours, the forest seemed to breathe again. Their conversation came in fragments, half English, half German, half gestures. Cooper pointed upward. Illinois. Weiss tapped his chest. Hamburg. Cooper asked softly, family. Weiss nodded, eyes downcast. Home bombed. A long silence. Then Cooper, barely audible. Mine too. Nothing more was needed. Two young men, raised on different continents, fighting for different countries, realized they had lost the same things, feared the same futures, and carried the same ache in their chests. The war had told them the enemy was a monster. But monsters don't shiver in the snow. Monsters don't share cigars on Christmas Eve. Monsters don't talk about their mothers. In that moment, both soldiers understood a truth that made the world feel painfully small. They were the same age, the same fear, the same heartbreak, wearing different uniforms. But war does not allow peace to last. The distant sound of engines echoed through the forest, American half-tracks pushing back toward the front. Headlights cut through the trees. Voices shouted orders. Cooper jolted upright. If his squad found a German beside him, they wouldn't hesitate. If Weiss's officers found him sharing a cigar with an American, the punishment would be worse. Weiss scrambled to grab his rifle. Cooper looked him straight in the eyes. And he did the one thing the war had never prepared him for. He grabbed Weiss by the sleeve and pushed him deeper into the forest. Go, he whispered. They'll kill you. Weiss stared for a long moment, confused, grateful, terrified. He raised two fingers to his temple in a shaky salute, and then vanished into the trees. Seconds later, Cooper waved down the approaching Americans, pretending he'd been hiding alone. The war resumed. The forest filled with noise again. The brief peace, warm as the glow of a dying cigar, disappeared into the cold. Neither man ever reported the encounter. Neither recorded it in letters or diaries. Moments like this didn't fit the narrative either side wanted. Weiss survived the war. Cooper did too. Decades later, both men would describe Christmas Eve 1944 as the night they realized something quietly devastating. The war's greatest weapon wasn't bullets or bombs. It was the lies it used to turn ordinary men into enemies. They weren't proud of the battles they fought, but they held on to the memory of that cigar as if it were proof that the war had failed to take everything from them. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered for brutality, frozen foxholes, massacres, columns of armor destroyed on icy roads. But hidden inside all that violence were moments of fragile humanity, moments that show who soldiers truly were when the war wasn't watching. Two young men, alone in a frozen forest, discovered a truth their superiors never wanted them to understand. The enemy was not always the enemy. Sometimes he was just another boy, trying to survive a winter that wanted him dead, fighting in a war he didn't start, dreaming of a home that might not be standing when he returned. And that night, in the freezing quiet of the Ardennes, a single cigar reminded them both. It's harder to hate someone once you've seen him shiver in the cold. If you want more untold stories of humanity, courage, and survival from World War II, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next episode.